today we have multi-platinum selling Grammy nominated artist Lecrae. Welcome. Thank you for joining us, Lecrae. What's up?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
So I'm gonna kick it off with a question that I typically ask people, which is like, you could be doing anything in the world. You could be a professional rock climber. You could be a refrigerator repairman. You could be, launching schools in Africa. You might already be doing that, actually. You could be doing anything. Why did you decide to become a Christian rapper who now has like such a huge impact in the community and is working, I would call it your ministry wise, like the prison ministry, the things that you're doing, buying the block, those kinds of things? Why be this?
Music was always a part of who I was as a kid. I grew up around hip hop. My uncles, my mom worked in correctional facilities, so a lot of the people who were locked up, they would slide me mixtapes, and I would listen to rap music as a kid. So, why music is real simple. I grew up admiring Diddy and wanting to just follow in the footsteps of Pharrell. So that all made sense. The faith component is not something I chose. I didn't grow up in church, so that really wasn't like an element I wanted to incorporate into what I was doing. But it found me, and so as an adult, I had a spiritual transformation, which made me really like begin to access, the spirituality that I hadn't previously, and incorporating that into my music. And so the doing the work in the community, I was just raised like that. My grandmother's been doing that. My mother was raised by the Black Panthers. It's just like, that's always been a part of me. The spiritual component is what is the ingredient that got added to it.
At what point did you become a businessman? Because I think there's like becoming a rapper, and I think there's a like, okay, I'm rapping, I'm doing my thing. And then I think like we see the rapper transition into like now owning businesses. I mean, like, I don't know if people know what's really happening behind the scenes. Do people just like wake up, have a lot of money and need something to do with it? Or is it like, does somebody direct you? Like where is the intersection between like, okay, I'm a rapper, I'm seeing success, and then boom, I'm a businessman?
I mean, I grew up, for all intents and purposes, I grew up, in a pretty typical kind of street environment. So, there were like certain paths you choose. And, I was hustling as a kid. And so that hustle, that sense of like the psychology of like, creating a product and getting behind it was always there. And some people are just purely artists. They love creating and making music. I was never really like that. I always had a sense of hustle to me, even as a kid. I was the kid who was selling candy door to door, even when it wasn't football season. I was the kid who, had a car wash or a lawn mowing service. I always had something going on. And so when it came to the music, I just think I wanted more. I was trying to figure out how to do more, and living in Texas and seeing the hustle of a lot of the Houston rappers showed me how to, really become a businessman. So really from the onset, if I'm being honest, it really, I started in the rap game kind of late in life. I was like 24. So, from the onset, I was just like figuring out how to do the business with it.
That's really interesting that you say that, you are a business. It seems like you're saying you are a businessman first, and the creative side is what you tapped into to, expand your empire. And so can we talk a little bit about that? Because a lot of times business owners, they may come from the other side where I am a creative first. And now I'm trying to transition that into a business, and I just can't get it. I'm trying, so
Right.
can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think you have to staff your weaknesses, right? If you know you're a pure creative and you just don't have that mindset that's thinking about, the infrastructure or like how all of this works, then you have to have some people around you who do think like that, and they can staff your weakness. So maybe you're the creative thinker and they're the more strategic thinker. But then the other thing I think that's been important for me is there's kind of two personality types. There's, the X and the I, the extrinsic people who work in order to get the affirmation from others, to get the money, to get the accolades. And then there's the intrinsic people who work because they just enjoy it, right? And I think if you're a creative, there's nothing wrong with the money and the accolades. That's great. But generally creatives are creating because they enjoy it. They like mastering their craft. You have to find that within the business sector, the infrastructure, instead of looking at it like, ew, it's just like, charts and graphs, figuring out like, what aspect of it do you enjoy and how can you get into it from that angle? And it's like, all right, what awakens my soul in terms of the business side that I may not have understood that makes me more interested in it?
I was reading and I was doing some stuff, and you did an interview. And one of the things that I thought was really profound was that you said, and I got my note right here. You said that
She always got them
I got
notes.
my notes. I don't play about my notes.
Every time.
My notes. You said that you don't believe in balance, that you believe in discipline. And I know a lot of us, we're taught to, work-life balance. Like you got to find the balance, and we can't find it. So we think we're failing, So can you talk a little bit about your disbelief in balance, but your belief in discipline?
Yeah, balance to me is like this fairy tale. It's like this thing everybody's looking for. It's like romance. It's like, you think you're gonna find the right person and the stars is gonna align. And in the end of the day, people are people. So that person you're with is gonna disappoint you at some point in time. You just got to figure out what person's disappointments you want to deal with. So it's like no one's perfect. And so because there's no perfect people, there's no perfect circumstances or situations. So balance is the idea. It's like utopia. It's like Neverland, that everything is working perfectly. Tension is really what we have to deal with. You got to deal with tension, and tension takes discipline. You got to be disciplined to say, all right, we're getting a little heavy on this side, so let's move it over to this side. We going a little too hard on, working. We need to take a break, So it's just that tension and being disciplined in all those different areas. And that creates a healthy whole life, not chasing this idea that everything's one day going to work out. Boy, you'll be looking for balance till you die if you do that. It's never going to come your way.
Right. I think that's right. I love that because recently you did a series with Experian called Protect the Bag. All right. And so if you out there, y'all want to go on YouTube and check this out. And so you talk about financial literacy, you talk about like how to spend money, protect yourself, protect your identity. I love the From the Street segments, by the way. I'm like, you totally should do more of those. The skits was cool too. The hot Cheetos one took me out. But one of the things when you talk about the point of tension that I wanted to bring is like in you talking to RG, I believe it was. He mentioned like the cycle of spending and saving, and you kind of mentioned that too. Like the cycle of spending and saving is like at first you're taught to just like save and then you spend, you save and then you spend. There's not a lot of investment yet. You're just like spending, saving, and that's all you have. I think that comes from some of those points of tension that you think you just pay for it with money, even in relationships when people come and they're like, hey, you know what? I need to borrow XY because I got this thing happen over here. And it's like the solve is like, oh, well, like I got a little bit of money. You know what I'm saying? I could just kind of give you that, right? Like, How did you get out of the cycle of or how did you grow your cycle, I guess, or expand from just like spend and save to like where the returns come in?
There's values and there are like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like things that are, you would do it, but it's like, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. It's like, it's an option. Like you got certain values that are like built in, you're going to follow these things. And then there's like options, like maybe I'll do this, ideal is what I'll call it. There's values and ideals. That's idealistic to do this, but my value is this. And I think we have to change our value system, right? So my value system had to change. When I grew up, I valued having a big wad of money. That's what I saw. I was like, oh, I got all this cash. That's what I valued. And so to me, it made no sense to put my money in the bank. I wanted it on me. And then my value system changed a little bit. I understood how banks worked. And I said, oh, let me put money in the bank. But then I got a little wiser and I realized, oh, money is not just for consumption, it's capital. You're supposed to let it work for you instead of working for it. So then I started realizing it's sitting in the bank. It's not doing anything for me. It's just waiting to be spent. So then I had to realize I need to take this money and invest it and let it do something for me. So it started growing. And now it wasn't just sitting in an account waiting to be spent. It was growing. And I could say, all right, let me cut it up now. Now there's some to spend. There's some like for an emergency, but most of it is making more money for me. And that was just a value system that had to shift for me as time went on.
What other things do you think need to be shifted for entrepreneurs, for our community, so that we can, one, protect our bag, right? But then two, that we can continue to grow in all of the ways that we're growing, both as professionals, but as entrepreneurs? What else do you want us to know? Like, I wish you knew this.
Oh man, there's so many things. My goodness. I mean, the biggest thing is, yes, money is not for consumption. It's for capital. Build capital. Invest in buildings and stocks. If you're going to go out and buy Louis Vuitton, at least own a piece of it. At least own a piece of the company if that's what you're going to go spend your money on. But a couple, like, in general, what I would want people to know is that you know, as far as starting a business in general is, again, that concept that don't work for the reward in terms of like the accolade or the money. Work because you enjoy it, because you're mastering something, you're getting good at it, and it brings you in. That's it. Like, intrinsic joy is a renewable resource. Extrinsic is not. Right?
Hold on, wait, we got to get us some life. Hold up. No, you can't go past that like that.
He skated over it. He skated over it.
Right. Hold on, okay?
Hold on.
Come on, we need to get your notes out.
Oh,
you got to say that one more time for the people.
Yeah, look, man, that intrinsic joy is a renewable resource. You can renew that again and again and again and again, because mastering something because you enjoy it is, you can wake up and feel good about doing that every day. You're not going to get tired of it. You're going to burn out if you're only chasing the extrinsic resources. If you're just chasing the bag or the hand claps or the awards, eventually you're going to burn out, because you're going to either get them, and then there's going to be a big gap between the next one. And then you're always chasing that. And it doesn't really bring you any satisfaction, because it's kind of like there's plenty of people who went to become engineers and they hate it. Yes, they're getting the money, but they hate being engineers, versus individuals who say, man, I really enjoy whatever it is that I'm doing. This engineer really wanted to go into becoming an entrepreneur, and they're enjoying this. It's exciting for them. That's a renewable resource. You wake up every day getting better at what you're doing, and you're going to make more money because of that. So, that's one big point I would tell people. And then as it pertains to finances, especially in the African American community, we have $1.4 trillion of buying power. We're not using it with one another. And so it leaves our community so fast that we need to double down. Communities should double down on themselves. The Jewish community doubles down, the Asian community doubles down, and they support one another. And that's how their money grows and their businesses thrive. So we got to see more of that in our communities.
Yeah, I think, you know what? Sometimes joy feels like a privilege, and buying doesn't feel like power. So I think that, I love that you said that. And I think I want to, so you had a past life as a debt collector, we heard through the grapevine. All right. So we know you've heard many excuses from people, or not, I'm not even gonna say excuses. I'll say reasons, because I don't want to invalidate anybody's experience. Many reasons why people can't pay, or just, maybe they don't even explain it, just hang up. But, and to them, that truth is so real that there's literally nothing else to hear. Right. So it's like, I tell people all the time, when you see people doing all these, like, oh, I can tell you how to make $1 million. I say, listen, they're not telling you how they made $1 million. They're telling you what they would have done had they known what they know now to make $1 million.
That's
And
good.
so when you get to certain points, it's like that joy feels like a privilege, and buying doesn't feel like power. It feels like necessity. Even some of the flashy things, it's like I'm faking it till I make it, which I hate faking it till I make it. But you know, that idea. So at what point in your journey does it like flip on? Like, was there a certain, I know there's certain like times where somebody would have been kicking it with somebody other than them. I've heard stories about kicking it with 50 Cent, him dropping a gem and that changed somebody's life, or kicking it with Diddy, him dropping a gem and then that changed somebody's life. Like, are there people around you? Because like, let's take it back to the moment where like, I ain't got no money. I got these rhymes. You know what I'm saying? Now, boom, we about to give you some money. Okay.
Right.
In that moment, because RG talked about this too in the Protect Your Bag series. Everybody check it out. He talked about like making more money than he ever had, but in his bank account being negative $30. Where does that mindset shift? Like, where do you now be like, okay, I got money. I'm never going back to zero. I don't have to have those habits anymore.
Right.
That the survival habits.
Yeah, I think, you know, for a lot of us, I mean, the resource of education and insight, it just flies over our head too often, and not realizing that these resources are available to us to learn and to grow. It's really not rocket science as some people would have you believe. You know, it's really a lot simpler than folks think. It's just most of us don't like the concept of building blocks. We like the concept of immediacy, like make it happen today. And I think the mindset shifts when you start putting together the building blocks. All right, you told me to do this, I'm gonna do this. I'll tell you, like for myself, I had a man who, you know, he told me, Lecrae, you know, you should do a Roth IRA. I'm young. I don't know what this is. He just smarter than me. He using big words. I was like, I don't know what this means. What are you talking about? You should do this. And so I'm listening to him and I'm like, well, you seem like you got more stuff together than I do. So why not? And I didn't really understand what I was doing, but I was just following his concept, right? And I did it, and it yielded me, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. And I was like, oh, shoot, that worked. You know, that began a mindset shift for me. It's like, all right, this thing he said worked. Let me dig deeper. And then I just started reading some books, and, you know, a lot of times that's all it takes is just building those blocks, patience, reading, building blocks, asking questions, and not being afraid to look stupid, you know, in order to find out what you need to do. And I think that's a big piece of it. And then of course, like self-discipline, that's the biggest thing. You gotta, you know, challenge yourself not to buy that thing.
It's really like when you say that, I think about the entrepreneur. I think about the entrepreneur that I was, who we feel like we don't have time for that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I am struggling, Lecrae. Like, I'm out here. I'm barely making it, Lecrae. These kids want to eat some food. You know, I got to come out. I got to make a coin. And so you get into that hustle, the hustle you talked about of, I got to make this money. We got to eat. You know, I got bills. And you don't have the time where you feel like you don't have the time to learn, you know, learn about things that are outside of what is bringing you in money. What would you say? What would you encourage an entrepreneur or somebody to do? How do you carve out that, you know what I mean? Like, listen, you got to 20 minutes, 30, like, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say, you know, time is a resource. You got to use it wisely, right? So a lot of folks will say stuff like that, but it's funny because you found time to catch up on all of your Netflix series. You know, you found time to, you know, spend 2 hours at the salon or wherever it was. You found time to do. You're gonna do the things that matter to you. You're gonna invest in the things that matter to you, a little or a lot. So another thing I would say is you have to create more assets than liabilities. And creating more assets means, like, where are you generating more money from? All right, so look, you getting your entrepreneur situation popping. but you got to drive an hour or you got an hour break, do a DoorDash. Sign up and deliver somebody's meal and make a little extra money. It's just like you just created another asset, right? Write resumes online. There's all kind of things. You can just look at YouTube videos and people will pay you to rate them. There's so many different ways to get an influx of money while you're doing the regular things you're doing. While you're sitting at the salon, you could be rating videos that you read, that you're watching online. It's just creating new streams of revenue so that you can build your nest egg in your investment situation and invest into yourself. And then you can let some of them assets, those things go. But again, it's just finding that process. My biggest thing is I redeem my ride. If I ride 30 minutes to work, I'm going to listen to something that's going to help me grow as mentally, spiritually, emotionally, financially. I'm going to redeem that ride instead of just, listening to a song. I'm free to do that, but why not use that time to grow?
I want to get back to the music for a second. So, your evolution from like 2004 to now is just awesome to watch. You have remained the same person, like in terms of like the way you feel. I'm sorry, I'm a bit feeler. I'm all about feeling. Like this genuine, authentic person. One of the things I did notice, like around like some of the ways that you enter like Christ into the songs, is a little different from the beginning. In the beginning, I felt like you were kind of calling out to God more, and now it's just like God in you, moving through you, and you're like referencing the blessings of it, and it's like a really great energy to see evolve. I think that like that's why like so many lives are changed, like witnessing your music and like you and like all the things that you're working on, because it feels real, it feels genuine, and it includes Christianity. I think that like where have you seen like finances and like religion kind of intersect in a way that could be beneficial, but also maybe not as beneficial? Like, what have you seen when it comes to that?
Yeah. You got to talk about the elephant in the room. In American church, obviously, money is something that has been, prostituted. Faith has been prostituted for money. Let's be honest, call it what it is. So obviously, you've seen a lot of those negative pictures, but that's not the full picture, right? The full picture that should be painted more often than not is that, God created us to be stewards of things, to be cultivators. God, the only species on the planet that can take something that was just like a rock and add more value to it by chiseling it and making it to a statue are human beings. So we're the only people who can do that. That's us, being in the image of God. God takes nothing and makes it into something and adds value to it. We're the only species on the planet that can do that. We can take something and add value to it. And so that's a beautiful thing. And we should do that. So my perspective on finances is, man, be a cultivator, be a steward. It's not really about money. It's currency, right? It's capital. So whether we're talking about wheat, straw, farm animals, cash, it's all about stewardship, taking care of things and benefiting other people and, being a good cultivator of what's been put in front of us. And so, like you said, I'm just trying to flesh out my faith in a practical way. I talk about my relationship with God vertically, but then I'm also talking about it horizontally, how it interacts with people on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so accessible, right? And like makes it like easy to adapt into everyday life, and like easy to pull the music into your life versus feeling like you got to go and get it, right? Like I think that I love that. Anyway, I could go on and on about it. I think that was awesome. Yeah, I think that's dope. What you said. All right. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask about his books. So I picked up your 2 books, and I'm really excited about it because you share your journey so authentically and so raw. Like I was reading like, oh, like that's how I read it. Like, oh my goodness, I wasn't expecting that. So as you think about, what do you think about being authentic in your journey? How does that capture your audience in a way that, further launches our relationships with God?
Well, I think, we grow by seeing other people's struggles, right? Like you watch The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith and his son, and it inspires you and reminds you like you're not alone. You can do this. You're not, you can, trust in God to work through other people to help you push forward. And so that's what I always want to do. I always, I remember I was a kid and I saw I was riding on a shopping cart and my fingernail got yanked out. And I didn't want to look at it because there was blood everywhere. I'm freaking out, right? And I go into the to this grocery store, and the butcher says, "Let me look at it." And he looks at it, and he's like, "You'll be fine." And then I looked at him, and he was missing two fingers. And in a weird way, that calmed me because I realized if this man who has lost two fingers is fine, then I'm gonna be fine. I lost a fingernail. And so he's lost fingers and he's like, you'll be good. Seeing his scars reminded me that my wounds could heal. You know what I mean? And so I think oftentimes that's what my vulnerability does for people. It's like, man, God healed him from this. God brought him through this and this and this and this. I'll be good. I'll be good. And so that's why I'm very vulnerable and transparent.
That was good, wasn't it?
That was a really good. So you just pulled that off the top like that.
Yes,
that was.
Yes, he did.
You know what? That was a good story. I probably would have been looking at the man like, oh Lord, I'm gonna my whole finger's about to fall off. If he ain't got no fingers, I don't know what's happening.
Right.
But I think that has to do with perspective though too. Right? Like how your perspective around a certain situation. Like you could look at it like, oh my goodness, I'm about to lose all my fingers. They about to fall off right now. Or you can look at it and say, like you did, like, you know what? I'm all right. Actually, just put a Band-Aid on it. You know how we do. Put a Band-Aid on it. Vaseline.
Right. Put some Vaseline on it. Right. Well, we're reaching the end of our time. This has been so great. Like, you're super dope to talk to. I appreciate your just like being a real person and like letting us know what you're working on. No Church in a While is popping right now, so make sure that you go and listen to it if you out there. A mixtape that Lecrae just dropped. There's so the different platforms shuffle the list, so I couldn't give it's song number 3, I think it is, but it's the one with the like Kurt Franklin like revolution kind of.
Yeah, you talking about Hold Up Wait. Yeah.
Yes, Hold Up Wait. That's it. Okay, that's my favorite one.
Right on.
And in it you talked about people, and so I think that like who you're around. I think you've talked about that here. So what we've heard is, I've read a little bit about leverage, capital, knowledge, financial literacy, who you're around, and how you're around others. That discipline piece of that. So I really appreciate it. Is anything else you want to tell the people before we end?
Man, I appreciate y'all, major salute and shout out to y'all for using y'all's platform to inform, educate, and inspire. And man, I'm just glad to be, a small part of the story.
Yes.
All right. Well,
we're honored.
Yes, we will see you around for sure.
Yes. Look forward to
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank y'all. Love and blessings.